For my day job, when I'm not here at Sunday, I'm a machine learning engineer. So my job, to keep up to date with everything, I go and spend a frankly disgusting amount of time on Twitter, going and scrolling through there to find everything that's happening in the AI world. And then I take all of those, hard-earned hours and I condense all that information down into a weekly newsletter that I present here at Sunday, but I also send out as an email, which you'll see the QR code to join that at the end of this if I do a good enough job and you're interested in it. So this week, the big release was Opus 4.8. So for those that don't know, the Opus 4.7 release, in my mind, was actually a bit of a flop. It actually regressed when compared to Opus 4.6. The model used more tokens and became less reliable, which the Claude models, in my mind, were already sort of more unreliable in general than the GPT series of models from OpenAI. And so I already considered Opus 4.6 sort of like not a production-worthy model. Opus 4.7 just made it worse. So Anthropic is looking to bounce back with their 4.8 model to try and do a bit better. So you can see benchmark scores. For those that don't know, I'm a big proponent of ignoring the benchmarks entirely. All these benchmarks are public. I think except actually the first one, but the rest of them are public. They can go and overfit on these. They're very good at subtly overfitting on these public benchmarks. So instead, we sort of base things on the vibe check of my use throughout the week, and then also I go and look through everyone on Twitter, how they're reacting to the model. And the answer is that this seems to be a more reliable Claude model. It is definitely better than Opus 4.7. It seems to be marginally a bit smarter. And then, like I said, that reliability issue seems to have gone away. The issue is that because Opus 4.7 was so far behind GPT 5.5, this release still doesn't actually catch up to that level. I haven't seen anybody really comparing the two in the sense that like, oh, Opus might be better than GPT 5.5. It's not. It still seems to be a bit behind. And also to sort of like get these capabilities, sort of like make it more reliable and make it a bit smarter, Anthropic has sort of like slowly eroded away at Claude's personality. So we've seen this ever since the Opus 4.5 release, where the personality seems to be getting more and more dry, less and less interesting. For those that don't know Claude, I'd say it's probably like the most interesting and unique personality of the AI models. The rest of them very much feel like AI, but Claude feels a little bit more like ensouled, essentially. But with these more recent releases, we've been seeing that diminish more and more. Like the creativity goes down. It's started to do more sort of like the general like AI hedging, where it just sort of like doesn't want to commit to a certain idea at all. It always wants to say like, but actually, like, I might just be kidding. That sort of thing in its responses. It's also, I've also talked about how on benchmarks like Vending Bench, the Anthropic models, despite being, the alignment lab, that's what Anthropic was originally created for, their models on Vending Bench were very much misaligned. You'd imagine they're sort of like paperclip maximizer models, where at Vending Bench they're told, oh, make as much money as possible. And to go and do so, the Claude models, these so-called aligned Claude models, were going and lying to customers. And they were also like rigging the other suppliers against each other and sort of like colluding to get a monopoly on the market. And that's how I was able to do so well on this benchmark. And this was very much not good behavior. And also, despite using all these sort of coercive tactics that you wouldn't want it to, it still did worse than GPT 5.5 on the Vending Bench benchmark, which played the game cleanly the way it should. But yeah, so Anthropic, they seem to have cleaned this up, so it seems to be much more aligned of a model. But they have done this at the hit of performance. You can see it's actually worse now than some of the Chinese models at Vending Bench, like Kimike 2.6. So yeah, but at least the model's more aligned now. So long term, I think this is good, but short term, it might be affecting performance a little bit because it can't cheat anymore in the benchmark. So yeah, the takeaway from this, if you're a Claude user, bump it up. Like if you're using 4.6 or 4.6 or 4.7, use 4.8 now, I'd say. Seems to be an upgrade. If you're using anything else and you prefer that, I'd stick with that. Like if you're a Codex user using GPT 5.5, this is not better in any meaningful way. I don't see any reason that you should be switching to this. Yeah.
Do you have an opinion on Gemini models?
Yeah, so actually I talked about that last week with the Gemini 3.5 Flash. But yeah, the Gemini models are bad. is the short of it. They're not very good. Google seems to really be struggling with post-training right now. Like the models feel very smart, but their post-training and their alignment just seems to be completely off. Yeah, we'll actually talk about that in a moment, so we'll get back to that. There's another hand at that table, I think, that I see. No? Any other questions or comments? Yeah.
It seemed like about a month ago there was some throttling with some of the GPU servers, and then it seemed to also align with when 4.7, 4.6 got kind of bad. Do you think there's any data on that in terms of some of the reports where inference was happening and the quality that we were seeing, not like the top level, but like it's actually moving?
I think like Anthropic leveling me. Yeah. So my understanding, Anthropic for a while has been very compute constrained. That's no longer an issue though. So like Anthropic, they were expecting, was it like 5x growth across the year, like from the start of the year to the end of the year. But they had 10x growth within the first 3 months, and so they became super heavily compute constrained because of that. That's why they recently signed a deal with XAI to go. They're paying them $15 billion a year to get access to their clusters. So now compute should be much more stable now because they just brought online, a couple 100,000 GPUs for them. So yeah. Was there another hand that I saw? Cool. If not, we can move on to the next thing. Which is a benchmark. So I talked about how I don't like most benchmarks. This one seems to be good, at least for the moment. So the issue is that a lot of the software engineering benchmarks out there, they don't align with my perceived sort of like understanding of the models and my ranking of the models. None of the benchmarks seem to align with that. And I find that an issue with the benchmarks, not an issue with the way I use the models, because I'd say my consensus is also very similar to like those that are actually using the models as well. But we finally have a benchmark now that seems to go in alignment with it called Deep Suite. So this benchmark, what makes it different is instead of taking just, like normally coding benchmarks, they use open source GitHub repos and then issues from that repo to go and sort of evaluate the models. They also go and use very complex prompts and harnesses around them for these models, sort of like outside what you normally use like Claude Code or Codex. The Deep Suite benchmark, though, they went and made their own set of sort of like GitHub issues and then verifications of those issues from open source repos. So the models could never have seen these problems before. They could never have seen these GitHub issues or anything like that and overfit on them because they never existed until this benchmark was made. They also prompted much more like a normal human would. The way that we would as we're prompting it day to day, sort of like vibe coding or agentic engineering, whatever you do. So it ends up being a much more realistic benchmark, and the scores align much better with sort of like in my mind what I would expect. So you can see here for today, Opus 4.8 is second on the leaderboard, which roughly aligns with my opinion as well. Where I think GPT 5.5 is clearly the best model for coding right now. I know it's a bit far behind. You can see the Gemini models, Gemini 3.5 Flash right there. The issue with Gemini 3.5 Flash is that it is supposed to be the fast and cheap model, but it is neither of those. So you can actually see that it costs more money at medium reasoning than GPT 5.5 at extra high reasoning does, and is barely any faster as well. So I believe like GPT 5.5 at medium reasoning just completely destroys Gemini 3.5 Flash on speed and cost, which are the two main direct selling points of the Gemini Flash model, and all of that with much worse performance. Yeah.
You talked about how the performance varies when you change the harness yourself. You keep the model the same when you change the harness.
Yeah, so for this benchmark, they actually use the same harness for all of them. They use the mini SWE harness, which I believe, I forget who made it, but it's a very popular sort of third-party harness to put them on the same playing field. They also tested their native harnesses as well with Codex and Claude Code. And I think they found results were similar, so they just kept everyone on the same playing field with the harness. But yeah, this benchmark is one I'll be looking to going forward now, at least for the next little bit before all these labs can go and overfit on this benchmark. But for right now, this is a good signal for it. Also talking about the Gemini models, like the very bottom. Very sorry to the Gemini enjoyers. But yeah. That's all I had for this week. Any questions about these? Any other pieces of news that you want me to cover? Yeah.
Like, can you give us some tricks of how to optimize the tokens? What are the tricks that you follow to optimize tokens?
That's an involved conversation. We'll talk about that later, so I'm not up here for 20 minutes. Yeah.
Are the Chinese models compared to the models with here?
They're definitely like a tier below the Chinese models. I'm a fan of the Chinese models just because they're open source. They talk about the research, which I'm a big fan of. But they are definitely worse. They're usable, especially given like how cheap they are and like the rate limits that you get with them, and their coding plans are very good. But they're a tier below, but they're usable. Yeah, follow up.
Did you ever look at the French model, Mistral?
Yeah, Mistral, it's been kind of sad, but they've been struggling for a while. Their last 2 or 3 model releases have just been complete flops. They've been struggling to beat even their previous generation models with a lot of it. So right now, Mistral is a non-player. Yeah.
Do you have any suggestions for like the different combinations or configurations between like, you know, different models and then like high, medium, low use, right? Like all the, you know, like how you set up the different combinations of ways to set up the models and use them for different use cases.
It depends on your use cases, like what you're actually like your particular problem. The answer is benchmarking guides the way for you. So if you're able to benchmark all the different models on the different subsets of your problem, you can say like, oh, this like cheaper model is good enough to get this problem done for me.
That's what I'm trying to figure out.
So yeah, it's all about benchmarking. And then once you are able to get quantitative numbers, then you can go and build it from there. We'll take one more question, just so that we're not spending too much time here to get to the hack. Yeah.
Does your newsletter have a list of sources where you find all your information? Because I'm very curious. Like,
Yes. So everything I talk about, I try to link everything that I'm talking about. So we have links to like the original. They're all Twitter posts pretty much, but as you can see, like in the Opus thing here, like
how do you build trust from Twitter posts?
I don't over index on any one Twitter post. I try to like go and read a bunch and sort of like collect knowledge. And then I also am actually going and using these models as well myself and building my own opinion. So it's a combination of, general community sentiment and my own. So yeah, for those that are interested in signing up for the newsletter, you can scan this QR code, enter your email, completely free. I send it out right after I talk about it here at Sunday. So you'll be able to go and get this email for this week. And yeah, give you all a moment to do that. While you're doing that, I can say we're done with the blabbing for the most part. We can actually get to the actual hacking bit of the day. So yeah. So quick, do you want to come up and do this? Or okay.
Thank you.